here is a 10X revolver.
When the law breaks down, the courthouse turns into a battleground. In these true stories, grieving parents, shattered survivors, and cornered criminals transform trials into scenes of bloody vengeance, where gunfire erupts, blades flash, and death delivers the only verdict that matters. But here is the question that haunts every case. When justice fails completely, who truly has the right to pull the trigger? Number 10, the verdict that never came.
Why did the women of Nagpur feel the need to kill?
For years, the women of Kasturbangar lived like prisoners in their own homes. Aku Yadav terrorized the neighborhood through sexual violence, extortion, home invasions, and murder. He faced 24 cases of molestation and assault. The police arrested him more than once, yet he always returned, swaggering back into the same streets like a man who believed he owned every doorway, every body, and every breath in that community. Inside that slum, horror was not a rumor. It was routine. Women were dragged from their homes, girls were brutalized, families were broken. According to reports, every dwelling in the slum had a rape victim. The police would allegedly ridicule women who filed complaints, accusing them of being loose women. A week before the lynching, a 25-year-old woman named Usha Narayane was being hunted by Yadav. He had visited her several times and threatened to throw acid on her face if she refused his advances. The women of the slum campaigned against this threat and requested police action. Yadav was arrested and taken into custody, but word spread that he would be released on bail once again.
As many as 50 women attacked him using knives and stones.
On August 13, 2004, the courtroom was packed with approximately 200 people, mostly women from the slum. They had gathered to witness Yadav's appearance in the Nagpur District Court. His case had been delayed, but this was supposed to be the day he finally faced justice. Instead, it became the day he faced something far worse. One woman allegedly identified him and shouted that either she would kill him or he would have to kill her. The women rose as one. They had entered the courthouse armed with knives, sickles, and chili powder. Blades flashed in the fluorescent light. Voices screamed. The police constable who was supposed to escort Yadav fled the scene immediately. Within seconds, the courtroom floor had become a killing floor. For 15 minutes, the women attacked. Yadav received more than 70 stab wounds. Chili powder was thrown in his face. Stones were hurled at his body. One of the alleged victims reportedly cut off his genitals. By the time the chaos ended, Yadav was dead on the shiny white marble floor of the Nagpur District Court. The women did not flee. They sang hymns over his body. The police initially arrested 5 women, but released them after protests. Several women came forward and dared the police to arrest every one of them. A group of lawyers campaigned for the women, arguing they should be treated as victims, not as the accused. Some called it mob justice. Others called it the first real justice those women had ever seen. In 2014, a Sessions Court acquitted all 21 accused, stating that their involvement was not proved beyond a reasonable doubt. The police constable who had fled the scene was the subject of a departmental inquiry. Beneath the blood and chaos was something even more haunting. A city forced to watch what happens when the law fails so completely that broken victims stop waiting to be saved and become the verdict themselves. An entire community rose to deliver justice. But sometimes, a single mother carries enough fury to make the courtroom her battlefield. Number 9, the mother who fired 7 bullets. Marianne Bachmeyer walked into the courtroom not like a criminal, but like a mother whose heart had already been buried with her child. On March 6, 1981, a courtroom in West Germany became the stage for one of the most chilling acts of revenge the world had ever seen. Marianne Bachmeyer sat among the crowd, while Klaus Grabowski waited to face trial for murdering her 7-year-old daughter, Anna. Quiet, pale, and burning inside, she had stopped believing that justice would ever be enough. Grabowski was a 35-year-old butcher who had already been convicted of sexually abusing 2 girls. In 1976, he had voluntarily submitted to chemical castration, but he later underwent hormone treatment to try to reverse the castration. Defense attorneys claimed this treatment counteracted the castration and led him to assault and kill Anna. On May 5, 1980, Anna argued with her mother and decided to skip school. She visited Grabowski's home to play with his cats. He held her for several hours, sexually assaulted her, and strangled her with a pair of his fiancée's tights. He tied the girl up, packed her into a cardboard box, and left her on the shore of a canal. His fiancée turned him into the police. Grabowski confessed, but bizarrely claimed 7-year-old Anna had tried to extort money from him and threatened to tell her mother about the abuse. He said his fear of going back to prison prompted him to kill her. On the 3rd day of the trial, Marianne reached into her purse and pulled out a Beretta 70 pistol. She aimed straight at the man who had stolen her daughter's future. Then she fired. One shot after another cracked through the courtroom, tearing apart the silence and the procedure. She fired 7 times. 6 shots hit Grabowski, who was killed almost instantly. She then lowered her gun and was apprehended without resistance. In the moments after the shooting, she said she wanted to kill him and hoped he would die. She later wrote on a handwriting test that she did it for Anna, drawing 7 hearts. The case sparked extensive media coverage. Television crews from around the world traveled to Lübeck. Bachmeier sold her life story to Stern magazine for about $158,000 to cover her legal costs. While she was in custody, many sent messages of support, gifts, and flowers. The West German judiciary was criticized for enabling a man who had sexually abused 2 girls to use hormones to regain his libido. On November 2, 1982, Bachmeier was charged with murder. She pleaded guilty to unpremeditated manslaughter. On March 2, 1983, she was convicted of manslaughter and unlawful possession of a firearm. She was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but was released after serving 3. A mother who lost everything decided the law was not enough. She made sure the man who killed her daughter never walked out alive. A mother's vengeance is intimate, personal, and devastating. But when a father's grief ignites, it can burn just as bright and just as fast. Number 8. The father who pulled the trigger. Gary Plauché was a father whose son had been stolen from him. On March 16, 1984, at Baton Rouge Metropolitan Airport, the camera was supposed to capture a routine extradition. Instead, it recorded one of the most infamous acts of vigilante justice in American history. Police escorted Jeffrey Doucet through the terminal to face charges tied to the kidnapping and sexual abuse of 11-year-old Jody Plauché. Doucet was not a faceless stranger. He had been Jody's karate instructor and had been sexually abusing the boy for at least a year. On February 14, 1984, Doucet kidnapped Jody and took him to a motel in Anaheim, California. California police raided the motel and arrested Doucet on February 29th without incident. Jody was returned to his family on March 1st. An employee of the local ABC affiliate had told Plauché when Doucet would be arriving. A news crew from WBRZ-TV was waiting for Doucet and had set up their cameras to record his arrival. Opposite the news crew was a bank of payphones where Plauché waited, talking to his best friend on the phone with his back turned. He wore a baseball cap and sunglasses as a disguise. He tracked the reflection of the camera lights on the wall as they panned toward him. As Doucet was escorted through the airport, he passed the news crew. He then walked past Plauché, who fired a single shot from his .38 snub-nosed revolver into the right side of Doucet's head at close range. Doucet fell to the floor, bleeding from a wound near his right ear. Plauché placed the telephone receiver down before a police officer restrained him. The officers who grabbed hold of Plauché recognized him. They kept him pinned against the bank of telephones, asking him why he had done it. Gary responded that if it had been their child, they would have done the same thing. Doucet fell into a coma and was rushed to the hospital, where he died the next day. Plauché was initially charged with second-degree murder, but agreed to a plea bargain in which he pleaded no contest to manslaughter. Psychiatrist Edward Uzzi examined Plauché and determined he could not tell the difference between right and wrong when he killed Doucet. The defense argued he was driven to a temporary psychotic state after learning of the abuse. Judge Frank Saya ruled that sending Plauché to prison would not help anyone, and that there was virtually no risk he would commit another crime. He was sentenced to a 7-year suspended sentence, with 5 years probation and 300 hours of community service, which he completed in 1989. He never served a day in prison. To many Americans, he became the face of a father's revenge. To others, he became proof that even the most understandable pain can still pull the trigger. The law was ready to take over, but a father's heartbreak got there first. A father's vengeance struck at the airport, far from the courtroom. But when one man storms a courthouse with a stolen gun, the body count rises even higher. Number 7. The Courthouse Massacre. Brian Nichols entered the Fulton County Courthouse on March 11, 2005, to face a retrial on rape charges. He never made it to the courtroom. 2 days earlier, court staff had found 2 handmade knives hidden in Nichols' shoes. Security had been increased, but it was not enough. The 33-year-old former computer technician was being escorted by a single female deputy when he overpowered her. He beat Deputy Cynthia Hall so badly that she suffered a head wound and facial fractures. He took her service weapon and keys. In a matter of moments, the place meant to contain violence became the place where it exploded. Nichols forced his way deeper into the building and entered Judge Roland Barnes's courtroom on the 8th floor. A lawyer present described Nichols' expression as completely calm, with a look in his eyes where he was completely calm, and it seemed like he was going to kill everybody and enjoy it. Nichols shot Judge Barnes, who never saw it coming, and was gone before he hit the floor. He then killed court reporter Julie Ann Brandow with a shot to the head. Nichols fled the building and fatally shot Sergeant Hoyt Teasley, a deputy sheriff, in the abdomen when confronted outside. Panic ripped through the courthouse. Hundreds of officers and cruisers and helicopters swarmed the area. Schools, restaurants, and office buildings were locked down. Highway message boards displayed descriptions of the stolen vehicle. Atlanta suddenly found itself hunting a man who had left 3 bodies behind. Nichols kept running. He carjacked vehicles and killed ICE agent David Wilhelm, whose body was found by a construction worker the next morning. Nichols forced his way into the apartment of Ashley Smith, a young woman struggling with addiction. He told her he would not hurt her if she did what he said. For 7 hours, Smith sat face to face with a murderer. She read to him from Rick Warren's The Purpose-Driven Life. At one point, she read a passage, and Nichols asked her to stop and read it again. Smith persuaded Nichols to surrender after he saw police surrounding the apartment on television. He waved a white t-shirt and came out and surrendered. A jury convicted him on 54 counts. He was sentenced to multiple life terms without parole, 1 stolen gun, 1 violent man, in a single morning that shattered a courthouse and scarred a city. A single gunman terrorized an entire city. But when one man's bullet is broadcast live to the world, the horror becomes history itself. Number 6. The sheriff who killed the judge. On September 19, 2024, a sheriff walked into a judge's chambers and opened fire. The 2 men had been close friends for 30 years and had eaten lunch together just hours earlier. Sean Steins, the Letcher County sheriff, killed District Judge Kevin Mullins with 8 shots at point-blank range inside the Letcher County Courthouse in Whitesburg, Kentucky. Security camera footage showed Steins firing multiple rounds while the judge sat at his desk and then continuing to shoot after Mullins fell to the floor. The sheriff then briefly left the courthouse before turning around and voluntarily surrendering. The case has a deeply unsettling backstory that began years earlier. In 2022, a woman named Sabrina Adkins filed a lawsuit alleging that a deputy sheriff named Ben Fields had coerced her into sex while she was under home incarceration. The abuse occurred over approximately 6 months and took place inside Mullins' chambers. Fields, who was responsible for monitoring ankle bracelets, told Adkins they could work something out regarding her fees if she complied. She testified she felt scared because refusing could have sent her back to jail. Another woman, Jennifer Hill, joined the suit with similar allegations before her death in 2023. The lawsuit also named Steins as a defendant for allegedly failing to properly train and supervise Fields. Fields ultimately pleaded guilty to third-degree rape, third-degree sodomy, tampering with a monitoring device, and perjury. Steins had recommended Fields for the home monitoring position, while Fields also worked as court security. He later fired Fields after the lawsuit was filed, but the damage was already done. 3 days before the shooting, Steins gave a deposition in the civil case that lasted approximately 5 hours. He answered questions about Fields and the training deputies received. When asked if Mullins knew about the sex acts in his chambers, Steins testified he could not recall. The attorney who deposed him later described Steins as subdued, tense, evasive, and unfriendly, an odd performance compared to most sheriffs he had deposed. After the deposition, multiple colleagues noticed a marked change in his behavior. The day before the shooting, Steins told a staff member that someone had told him to kill himself, or else they were going to kill his wife and daughter. He went home to check on his family, had his wife put on a bulletproof vest, and had someone call to check on his daughter. A local police chief told another official that Steins had lost his mind. Staff members were concerned about his very strange behavior. Steins also visited his family doctor that day and was diagnosed with an acute stress reaction, though he denied any depression, anxiety, psychosis, or suicidal thoughts. On the day of the shooting, Steins and Mullins went to lunch at a local restaurant. A witness heard Mullins ask Steins if they needed to meet privately. Later, security footage showed Steins using both his phone and Mullins' phone to call his daughter multiple times just before the shooting. Police later determined that Steins had made the calls to his daughter using Mullins' phone. The sheriff then stood from his chair and fired 8 rounds at the judge, who was hiding behind his desk. After the shooting, Steins surrendered. He told police they were trying to kidnap his wife and child, and said he would not take another breath if he left the building. His legs trembled as he scanned the area around him. Body camera footage showed him repeatedly saying he did not feel safe to the arresting officers. Steins' attorneys have pointed to his deteriorating mental state and filed motions to determine if he has a serious mental illness that would exclude him from the death penalty. A social worker who examined him 4 days after the shooting reported he appeared to be in an active state of psychosis and was unaware of his surroundings. His aunt testified she had never seen him act the way he did the night before the shooting, and described his behavior as psychotic. He has pleaded not guilty and is awaiting trial. A sheriff who once enforced the law became its most shocking violator. His friendship with the judge lasted 30 years. The courtroom became the place where it all ended. A law enforcement officer turned his gun on the very judge he once served. But when a defendant charges a witness stand, the courtroom becomes a shooting gallery. Number 5. The gangster who charged the witness stand. Sial Angelau was one of the last men standing in a sweeping federal gang prosecution. On April 21, 2014, the 25-year-old defendant sat before a jury in Salt Lake City. He was accused in a racketeering case tied to the Tongan Crips. The courtroom was tense with the kind of silence that feels one heartbeat away from disaster. Angelo was not handcuffed in front of the jury. That was routine practice in federal court. A witness was describing the violent world Angelau allegedly came from. Then, without warning, Angelau sprang from the defense table. He grabbed what appeared to be a pen or pencil and charged the witness stand. The witness was shackled and could barely move out of the way. A deputy U.S. Marshal opened fire at close range. 4 shots tore through the courtroom. Jurors, lawyers, and court staff were thrown into panic. Angelau collapsed, bleeding on the floor where his trial had just turned into his final moment alive. He was carried out on a stretcher and later died at a hospital. Angelau's family argued the force used against him was excessive. The Tongan Crip gang threatened to retaliate against law enforcement, and the marshal who shot Angelau had to be temporarily moved out of Utah for her safety. A federal judge later concluded the marshal's response was legally justified. The threat had been immediate and severe. One reckless charge, one flash of rage in a man who entered court to fight for his future. He never walked back out of it alive. When a defendant charges a witness stand, the courtroom becomes a shooting gallery. But when the defendant attacks the judge, the violence is even more personal. Number 4. The attack behind the bench. David Paradiso was on trial for murdering his 20-year-old girlfriend when he stunned the courtroom with his answer. He said his girlfriend deserved to die after being asked why he had killed her. Loud gasps were heard across the courtroom. The family protested that he was mentally ill and unfit to testify. His mother left the courtroom because she was too upset. The judge called for a recess and sent the jury out. As the jury filed out, Paradiso jumped from the witness stand. He lunged at Superior Court Judge Cinda Fox with a 6-inch metal shank he had hidden from jailers. He punched her and stabbed her repeatedly in the arm. Bailiffs were distracted by the outburst from his mother and brother moments earlier. The judge was only 4 feet away. Paradiso had smuggled the weapon into court by hiding it in a security leg brace worn under his pants. The brace had metal parts that masked the shank when he went through a metal detector. An anonymous family member had called the jail 2 weeks earlier, warning that Paradiso had a weapon made from a broken hair clipper blade. 2 searches failed to find it. Lodi Police Detective Eric Bradley, the lead investigator in the murder case, rushed in and shot Paradiso in the head and shoulder at point-blank range. The judge was treated for injuries to her neck and arm and released. Paradiso died instantly. Paradiso had killed his girlfriend in the back of his mother's car in 2006. He forced his mother to keep driving while he dumped the body near a road in Amador County. He faced the death penalty. His defense attorney said Paradiso was attempting to cut the judge's neck the same way he had killed his girlfriend. The attack changed the lives of everyone in that courtroom. Paradiso's mother said she believed her son wanted police to kill him by attacking the judge. She said no one had believed he was crazy before, but now they would have to believe it. Attorney Chuck Pacheco said his client was hell-bent on killing the judge and that Detective Bradley saved the judge's life. The investigator had responded immediately from the gallery as the courtroom erupted into chaos. The trial was about one killing. It nearly became another. A defendant who murdered his girlfriend tried to murder a judge. He failed and paid for it with his life. But when one man storms a courthouse with a stolen gun, the body count rises even higher. Number 3. The judge who fought back. Judge Joseph Bruzzese walked toward the courthouse on a Monday morning when a man rushed him from the parking lot. It was August 21st, 2017, in Steubenville, Ohio. Surveillance footage later showed Bruzzese approaching the Jefferson County Courthouse when Nathaniel Richmond appeared and began firing without warning. The judge raised his hands to defend himself, stumbled but did not fall, and then struggled with Richmond, who dropped his gun. Richmond, 51, had a pending wrongful death lawsuit before Bruzzese was tied to a 2015 house fire that killed his mother and a young child. Richmond was also the father of Malik Richmond, one of 2 Steubenville High School football players convicted in the notorious 2012 rape case that had drawn national attention. 2 weeks before the shooting, Malik Richmond had been denied 1 year of football eligibility by Youngstown State University because of his rape conviction. Richmond had a criminal history of violence. He had pleaded guilty to assault and attempted murder for a drive-by shooting in 2002 and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. During his son's rape trial in 2013, Nathaniel Richmond had begged the judge for leniency. The judge was shot in the abdomen, but remarkably stayed standing and even walked across the street. He wielded his own gun and fired back at Richmond as a probation officer ran from around the corner and shot the attacker. Richmond limped away, reached his car, and pulled backward before the officer shot him again. His car stopped across the parking lot. He died at the scene. Bruzzese survived surgery and returned to the bench. Jefferson County Sheriff Fred Abdallah had advised the judge to carry a gun years earlier because there were dangerous individuals out there who might want retaliation. The judge was described as an avid sportsman who loved guns. The surveillance video was released after a 3-year legal battle by the Associated Press. The Ohio Supreme Court ruled unanimously that the footage was a public record. The shooting had nothing to do with the rape case, but the Steubenville tragedy had found its way to the courthouse doors. A father's vengeance struck a judge outside the courthouse. But when the violence comes from inside the courtroom, the stakes are even higher. Number 2. The shot heard around the world. On November 24, 1963, deep in the basement of Dallas Police Headquarters, cameras were rolling. Officers were preparing to transfer Lee Harvey Oswald, the 24-year-old accused assassin, to the county jail. Then, out of the crush of reporters and police, a stocky nightclub owner named Jack Ruby lunged forward. He fired a single shot into Oswald's abdomen. Oswald was rushed to Parkland Memorial Hospital, where he died less than 2 hours later. The horror of that moment came from more than the gunfire.
This is the basement floor of the Dallas City Hall, and that's a scuffle on the...
Oswald had been the man the whole world wanted to hear from, the suspect at the center of the murder of a president. But before he could ever stand trial, before America could hear his defense, he folded in pain on live television. Ruby's act looked less like a planned assassination and more like history cracking open on camera. He was not a cop, not a prosecutor, not a grieving relative, just a Dallas nightclub operator who inserted himself into the most explosive case in America. Ruby's stated reasons shifted over time. He claimed he wanted to spare Jacqueline Kennedy the pain of returning to Dallas for Oswald's trial. He reportedly told police he did not want to be a hero and that he did it for Jacqueline Kennedy. Whether people believed him or not, the damage was done. The accused killer of a president had himself been silenced before the law could fully speak. That single shot fed decades of conspiracy theories that still refused to die. Ruby did not escape the consequences. He was convicted of murdering Oswald on March 14, 1964, and sentenced to death. The conviction was overturned on procedural grounds in 1966. Before a new trial could begin, Jack Ruby died of cancer in prison on January 3, 1967. His defense team had argued he suffered from psychomotor variant epilepsy and was in a fugue state when he shot Oswald. A nightclub owner silenced the man who silenced a president. The truth may have died with Oswald, but the questions never did. A single bullet changed the course of American history. But what happens when an entire community decides the law has failed them completely? Number 1. The millionaire who swallowed cyanide. Michael Marin had climbed Mount Everest, but he could not climb out of his own collapse. A former Wall Street trader and Yale-educated lawyer, Marin had built a life that appeared golden from the outside. But by June 2012, that life was crumbling. He was facing a Phoenix courtroom over a fire that had consumed his $2.5 million luxury home in 2009. Prosecutors said Marin, buried under crushing debt, had deliberately torched the mansion. Then came the detail that made the case unforgettable. He escaped the burning property by climbing down a rope ladder while wearing scuba gear. Marin's attorneys argued he was an avid adventurer who simply prepared for emergencies. But the jury was not convinced. On June 28, 2012, the jury returned its verdict after 5 hours of deliberation. As the word guilty echoed through the courtroom, Marin showed no visible emotion. He calmly reached into his pocket, pulled out a small vial, and put something into his mouth. He then took a drink from a water bottle. Minutes later, he collapsed in front of everyone. The courtroom froze. What had been a trial suddenly became a medical emergency. Deputies rushed to help, but doctors at the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's Office could not save him. An autopsy later confirmed Marin had ingested cyanide. Investigators discovered Marin had purchased the cyanide online weeks before the trial, suggesting he had planned his escape long before the verdict landed. He had also made a series of cryptic phone calls to family members the night before, telling his sister he loved her and that everything would be okay. Marin's last words, reportedly spoken just before he collapsed, were an apology. The cyanide worked faster than any appeal ever could. A man who had once stood on the highest point on earth chose to die the moment the truth caught up with him. He did not lash out at a judge or a witness. He turned the final act inward, leaving behind a courtroom frozen in shock and a mystery that would never be fully explained. Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos popping up on screen for more unbelievable stories.